All right, everyone. Welcome to Digital Conversations. I am your host, Billy Bateman, and today I am joined by the great Aston. How you doing, Josh?
Doing really good. Thanks, Billy. Appreciate the invite to be on.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. So, Josh is the founder and CMO of Above the Fold Digital, and we're going to talk a little bit about programmatic today and break down what it is. But before we get into that, you've got a really interesting background, and love for everyone to hear a little bit about your background and how you came to start Above the Fold.
Oh yeah, I'd love to. I love my story and I'd love to share it. So I got my start at a company called 1-800-Contacts, which I know you had Lauren Joyce on a couple episodes ago, and so it was fun to be able to relive kind of the 1-800-Contacts memories that she shared of what they're up to at 1-800-Contacts. But yeah, I got my start there. I got started in the call center, and I love that part of my background because I was in the front lines, right? Like I was answering phone calls, talking to customers. It was awesome to be able to start, I guess, in my career there, and quickly moved up to the marketing team. It's kind of a cool story. I met my wife at 1-800-Contacts, and we were on a similar team, and we were getting a little bit of pressure that we maybe either needed to change teams or something, just because they just want to make sure they kept it appropriate. Because when I started, we weren't married. We got married anyway. So a job opened up in marketing. I was kind of getting burned out of the sales team side of it. I realized I loved the experience, but it wasn't for me long term. And so I went to the marketing team and said, "Hey, I really want a job. What can I do to get this job?" And they said, "Go home, learn everything you can about Excel, and good luck on the interview tomorrow." So I went and found a book called The Excel Bible, the driest, biggest book you could find, and read it that night. Like literally went through it that night and landed the job. So that was my first career. I went from being a call center agent to actually being over digital marketing for 1-800-Contacts in the matter of about a year and a half, which was really cool. Then moved over to another company for about 15 years. The company is called Progression. And the cool thing there is, when I started there, it was under $1 million in revenue. There wasn't any formal marketing. I was really the first marketing hire that they had. And when I left 15 years later, it was valued at over $1 billion. So you can imagine the kind of cool experiences that I got working with amazing people. For the last couple of years there, my budget was about $50 million a year just for digital marketing, which was really cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so I think those are the two things that really founded who I am. And that leads probably more into, what I'm doing now, which is Above the Fold. So right before COVID, I left Progression, and I was interviewing with some other companies, just trying to figure out what I wanted to do next, kind of with my career and my life. And I had a couple really good jobs. I had some offers in hand, and my wife said, "What are you doing? Like, I love you have these offers, but we've got a little bit of a nest egg. We've got some money, and you've always wanted to go do your own thing. Why not go pursue that?" And my wife is awesome for me because I'm very risk averse, and she keeps me a little bit more risky than I normally would be. So I said, "Okay, I'm going to do it." Of course, COVID happened and lots of crazy stuff happened, but 18 months later, things are going really well. And our agency, I've got a co-founder named Jessica Chase. I actually worked with Jessica back at 1-800-Contacts, and we reunited as business partners. And yeah, the programmatic agency is going really well. Jessica has 12, 13 years in programmatic. I've got a rich background in digital marketing and working on the advertiser side. And then we spent a couple $100,000 a month on programmatic at Progression. So it just was a really good fit, and it's been a lot of fun already.
Awesome, man. Awesome. So you've got a lot of experience in digital marketing. How do you see it changing and evolving over the last couple of years?
Oh, such a good question. This is one of my favorite questions. How it's evolved, I think it's just become super competitive, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So, back when I started, in early 2000s, like 2004, it was possible for me to kind of stay on top of everything that was going on. I actually truly felt like I was a pretty good expert at email marketing and paid search and all these different areas. And I actually managed those all really well in the beginning of Progression. Like I did a good job. I could never do that today. Like there's so much going on in each of those areas and beyond and all the new areas that pop up every day, that it just becomes super competitive, and it's been hard. Like you really got to, I feel like you really got to find a niche, and focus on it, and let that be the place you hang your hat on. So anyway, I think that's one big thing that's changed. I think the other thing is you just got to be hyper efficient at what you do, and that definitely lines up nicely with programmatic. But I think the room for error, the margin of error, is very low at this point. And with people using machine learning, AI, programmatic, over 70 to 80% of all marketing is done, of all digital marketing is done through programmatic. And if you don't have things like that working for you, like I think you're just running up a really steep hill to try to compete.
I agree, especially on the specialization, and things have gotten so much more competitive. Like, 15 years ago when I got my first job in digital marketing, like I didn't know what was going on. They sat me down. They're like, "This is Google AdWords. This is how it works." I was like, "Okay." And then they're like, "This is your goal. Like, figure it out." And I'm 18 years old, and I'm like, "Okay, like I'm going to try to figure this out,"
Correct.
And given a little bit of time, I was like, "Oh, like we can get leads pretty cheaply and bring them in." But man, now it's a whole nother animal. Like I don't even pretend to get in and know what's going on in pay-per-click anymore.
No,
So
it's so true. When I first left Progression, one of the things that I focused on was for about 6 to 8 months, I actually just went really wide because I wanted to see what that niche area was that I should focus on. So I worked with a lot of B2B partners that I didn't have a lot of experience in, and anyway, lots of different things. And man, that was the biggest thing I walked away was how deep all this different marketing has become. So the other thing I'd say too is it's just so important to focus on, to really figure out who the right audience is, who the right target is for your specific company, and to become really good with that audience, to really learn that audience in and out so that you can speak the right message and get them to actually convert.
Agreed. So you mentioned programmatic before I hopped in, that being one of the key areas you think people need to focus on. I mean, I'll be honest, I know what programmatic is at like the 5-year-old level. So if you could, and I don't think I'm alone either.
No.
So what is programmatic?
Yeah, it's so cool. I mean, to clear the air on that, honestly, we speak with people all day long. I speak with people all day long, CMOs, enterprise levels, small to medium-sized businesses, SMB. Almost everyone has that question. And even if people are running programmatic, and sometimes it's even pretty healthy budgets in programmatic, they will be the first to admit that they really don't understand in a deep way what programmatic is. So you're definitely not alone, Billy. And it's been a huge focus of mine for the last 18 months, is just going very, very deep into what programmatic is and what it isn't. And if this is a fun conversation that me and my business partner debate all the time, of like, what's the best answer to how to concisely kind of elevator pitch type explain what programmatic is. And honestly, I think the thing that I like the best is it's using technology to target users that will help advertisers meet their end goals across display, native, CTV, audio, and video formats. But there's a little bit to unpack there. It's really hard to just say that and run away. Yeah. There are two parts what I say. The one part of it is when you're saying target users, there's super sophisticated ways that you can target those users. So it might be behavioral, demographic, or geographic. We like to kind of bundle them into those 3 different categories. Those 3 areas alone are pretty deep in programmatic, and usually are far more advanced than what most people realize they are. The technology is very sophisticated beyond what I knew was possible before I got into running this agency, actually. The other side of that, I would say, is once you hyper target those audiences, there's a lot of value, and the real kind of secret sauce is in figuring out, once you've targeted the right audience with these really cool technologies and approaches, making sure that you're targeting those people appropriately with the right message across all the different formats. So across display, native, CTV, audio, video, all those different formats. That's where you really see the huge lift. If you're doing one of those things, it's great. It does well. It stands alone fine. But once you get all those things working in conjunction with one another, that's kind of where the magic happens. So anyway, yeah.
Okay. All right. So what really, like we have a lot of different tools in our belt as digital marketers. what do you think is like the one thing that really makes programmatic unique? I came from a paid search background, and like you get into those long tail keywords, and that's where you can get like hyper targeted. But dude, those came up like once a day if you were lucky.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, rare finds.
Yep. So
Yeah,
so with programmatic, what's the unique thing that just makes it, this is why you've got to have it in the belt.
yeah, it's a good question. And it might sound a little bit repetitive, but I actually think the hyper targeting part of programmatic is what makes it special.
Cool.
And just to dig into that maybe a little bit deeper than I previously kind of relayed, there's three different ways we think about programmatic. There's location, there's demographics, and there's behavioral.
Okay.
And location by itself is like blew my mind. I was completely blown away at what you could do with location, especially with maybe we could spend some more time about this later, but like iOS 14 stuff and what's going on with cookies. People are used to losing capabilities right now when actually programmatic is not really losing those capabilities. And the abilities that come with programmatic to target people based on location is exceptional. So just an example, you can use basically any location, whether it's a residence, a commercial, like an actual business, or even just a store or a place where people recreate. All those things are very customizable and targetable with programmatic. So you literally kind of the there's no end to kind of how you can use location to target the right audience. It really comes down to whether you know where your audience is hanging out or where they're going to be. If you know that, programmatic makes it easy to actually get to those individuals and to actually put an ad in front of them.
Okay. So you mind sharing a few examples of how you guys are using this with clients?
Yeah, for sure. Got a couple of cool examples. There's always fun things that we're up to on location, especially.
Yeah.
One of the cool ones we recently did was, actually maybe kind of two come to mind. One is, it was during the winter, and we were working with some outdoor retailer type brands, and they were ski related. They wanted to target people that were skiers, and to take that one step further, it wasn't just about targeting skiers; it was about targeting people that were active skiers and that were actively going to the ski resort a couple times a week, like frequent skiers, right? Like kind of upper end skiers for sure.
Yeah.
People that really enjoyed it. So what we did is there's about 530 ski resorts in the United States. That was their target area. So we set it up so that we could target all 530 ski resorts, which included the lodge, the ski runs, every the trams, the whole bit, right?
Yeah.
They didn't want to just target the lodge. They wanted to catch everybody out on the slopes as well. And then we overlaid, hey, we want to make sure these people there are there frequently, a couple times a week. And so we pushed that all together and targeted very efficiently and very quickly all 530 ski resorts and pushed it to the desired kind of CTA or goal that the brand had, which was getting in front of those individuals. And it was kind of a community-based approach. So they wanted them to join this community and give them benefits. And it was kind of an influencer play. And super cool, super effective.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Anything else besides just like the geo? I think the location is really cool.
Yeah.
I know I have a friend who's a personal injury attorney, and they have areas where they're like, hey, we do a lot of ads focused on where people are based on location that work for them. But anything besides, the location that's really interesting?
Maybe 2 points on that. So it's cool to bring a personal injury lawyer. We have a personal injury lawyer that we work with that does a really good job running their business out of their law firm out of California. And obviously things got a little bit challenging for them during COVID, especially in California where things were locked down pretty tight. So that's about the time we met this individual. What we did there is we definitely targeted places that we knew his clients would most likely be. And the cool part about it, to spin it a little bit further, is he was paying $100 to $400 cost per click on Google.
Wow.
Insane. Like it's one of the highest, if not the highest spend places you can go spend on Google ads, right?
Yeah.
And it was fine. Like he was maybe scraping by on that, but it was a lot to pay. So we said, hey, let's go target these people, these places that you know to target. Let's do it programmatically, which is basically everything non-Google. It's everything not gated.
Yeah.
And let's see what that does for you. Let's see what we can do for your cost per click. And it brought it down to like $5 to $7 cost per click. And the quality of people that he was driving was equal to what he was paying for the $100 to $400. So obviously you can imagine he's pretty dang excited about taking his cost from $100 to $400 to $5 to $7. Anyway, but
Yeah.
that just to further extend that. But the other, to answer your real question about the other types of methods we use to target, the other two are demographics and behavioral. Maybe I'll focus on behavioral. One thing we do, which is not uncommon for businesses, is site retargeting. But what makes site retargeting unique for us is, obviously site retargeting is when people come to your website, you track them, and you target them, usually with display ads later. We're all very familiar with getting ads. After we've gone to a website, we'll get ads for months and for who knows, years. It feels like it never ends. But the cool part about programmatic site retargeting, is once you've targeted individuals that come to your site, one, you certainly can get very granular about what they viewed and make sure you put a relevant site retargeting ad in front of them. But the second part of that is all those different mediums that I mentioned before. When you're site retargeting with programmatic, you can show us a connected TV ad, a podcast audio ad, display native, you name it. And that, I think, is not something that people really think of very often, but with programmatic, it's second nature of like, hey, if you're going to get these people to your site, you've already, that's a huge hurdle just getting them to your website. Now let's make sure that we use the power of video and audio and all these great ways to make sure we help them progress down the funnel and convert.
So let me pause you, and I just want to dig into a few things you mentioned. So one would be like podcast ads. So you can do that with programmatic. Like, somebody comes, they visit the website, I go to listen to my favorite podcast, and then I get an ad for whatever website, even though I went to my own website and I'm running those ads.
Yeah, totally. And I think the game changer for both the marketer, the consumer, and the podcast owner, right? Because obviously the more relevant, this is what programmatic is all about. Back in the day, it was like you just did your best to get as close as you could to your target demographic. Like you just did the best you could. That might have been buying all the commercials you could on HGTV or whatever. Well, times have changed and it's become, hey, you don't have to go waste all that money on, 80% of that money may go towards people you don't even want to target. This is about once you define the audience, hyper target on those people. And for a place like podcasts, it's phenomenal because I don't think people expect, especially with TV and for radio and audio or podcasts, I don't think people expect it to be quite so custom,
no, for sure.
It's surprising in a good way because all of a sudden you're hearing ads for what you want. It's funny because now that I know, how this works, I'll go and listen to podcasts. I love podcasts, and I know which podcasts actually employ more programmatic type ads. And it's crazy. This is horrible. It's crazy how many things I've actually purchased from those ads versus not getting targeted in a programmatic way. It's just so effective. It's like, man, that was an audio ad. It was super well done. And it's actually for a product that I was already looking at. Like, oh man, it's powerful.
Yeah, no, I listened to an ad that I was like, how do they know? I was, this podcast I've listened to for years, and all of a sudden I'm getting ads that actually are like, well, I did look at the website for that. It was interesting. I had no idea that. I thought, oh, just a coincidence. Like it kind of matches up with the audience, But it actually probably some programmatic. Now that you're bringing this up, that's cool.
One funny point on that is I think maybe I've shared this with you before. We've chatted, but when I was looking at trying to build my programmatic tech stack, you have to have reporting and you have to figure out how you're going to be able to target and all these big questions, right? Which without my co-founder Jessica, I would have been spending 5 years on this. Luckily, she knows the space really, really well and was able to point us in the direction really quickly. And we finalized a couple different partners that we wanted to work with relatively quickly. And I was at home watching TV with my wife, and we hadn't pulled the trigger yet. We were just close to making a decision. And we were watching Apple TV, and the Apple TV did an update or something, and so I had to restart. And in that brief moment, it was about a minute where it was restarting, our TV flipped on, right? Just regular TV. And in that 1 minute, I got served an ad by one of those companies that we were investigating. And they literally said, your agency should be using our technology, which of course, that's so customized. Sometimes you wonder if it's just by coincidence. Well, clearly my wife's like, that's insane. And she's like, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen. And there's no way that's coincidence, right? Yeah. So that was actually a key thing that happened to me where I then decided like, hey, we got to go with that technology. But it's fun to have those experiences. It's rare to have those like blow your mind, customized, personalized experiences like that.
For sure. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this, like what's the ideal company look like that should be using programmatic?
Yeah, super good question. We talk about this all the time because obviously, of course, we're trying to figure out who should be our best target audience. But I think there's a couple of things that have kind of risen to the top. And it's not really industry based. Like a lot of times companies, I think, expect you to focus on a particular industry. We've worked with so many clients in so many different industries that really hasn't been a thing that's risen to the top yet. What does rise to the top as making it a better fit is kind of where people are at in the types of marketing and investment they want to make with their marketing dollars. And what I mean by that is people that do well with programmatic is a little bit different. If it has a challenge, it's a challenge. You can't just open up Google Analytics and see how it's doing usually.
Yeah.
Usually it takes a little bit more of a robust number of KPIs and metrics that you're watching to get the full fill of what it's doing for your company. That does not a discount to the fact that there are metrics that you watch to make sure that it's ROI and that there's ROAS. That happens. That's how it has to be. But it's more complex than, it's more complex than what a lot of people are accustomed to. So the people that do best with it are people that already are running things like billboards, TV, radio, direct mail, people that believe in filling up the funnel with good prospects. It works really well for them because they already understand the value of those types of mediums. What we say with those individuals is, hey, this is just going to be way more sophisticated and advanced, but it's still building the funnel and helping you drive people down the funnel just with very hyper-targeted capabilities. And if you've got an open mind to like, hey, we're going to look at like 4 or 5 different things to measure the results, we'll make sure you're comfortable with those things. You've got to be comfortable that we're going to do that. And it's not going to be so easy as just cracking open GA and getting a report every day. It's going to take a little bit more work and the rewards are worth it, but you got to be willing to do that. So I'd say just those people that are willing to dive into those types of areas.
Okay. I like it. So let's talk about measuring results.
Yeah. The number one.
How do you measure the results?
Sorry about that. Yeah. The number one result that people like to measure and that we love to measure too, it's our number one question, is ROAS, just return on ad spend. And that could mean very different things to different people. But honestly, just making sure that we're on the same page of like, hey, if you spend X dollars, what do you need to get out of this? We love to do that because programmatic is leveraging technology so well that if we set the settings the right way and set things up the right way, it's going to do very good at hitting that ROAS and maximizing the dollars and getting the most out of it. But if you don't know what that ROAS is, like just with anything else, you're just throwing a dart into the darkness. So ROAS is number one. The other cool things that we look at with vendors are, foot traffic increases. One cool thing I didn't mention earlier is with that geo component of programmatic, it kind of works bi-directional. So not only can we target people in a really cool way, like I mentioned at ski resorts or anywhere, but you can also, like if you're running digital ads, you can actually put a geo fence, we'll call it, around your stores or around other locations, and if people came from your website to those locations. So gone are the days of like, well, I think we drove enough people to the store. It's like we did a cool campaign for a very large outdoor vendor. Everyone would know the brand, but it was about driving, traffic to the stores. And with programmatic, you can 100% know that you drove traffic to the stores.
Cool.
So foot traffic is definitely one thing that we like to hang our hat on. Online sales increases. The other one that I think is pretty surprising and cool for people is brand searches. So there's a lot of times we'll talk to companies and they're like, man, we love paid search. We love SEO. But we've kind of tapped out. We don't know where else to go grow. We're kind of beholden to whatever the industry trends are or whatever the trends are going on that we don't feel like we have control of. When we do programmatic, you're targeting such a defined audience and the right audience that you usually always see your branded terms and your industry terms go up with the programmatic investment. So it's one of my favorite things to put up a report and to set it up where it goes out to them so they can see, like, as we're doing programmatic, they can see Google Trends or their internal data rise as soon as we increase and spend money on programmatic. We just did it for a heavy equipment company. Excuse me. They sell heavy equipment to construction companies, farming companies, and we were targeting very specific stores and very specific locations. And to be able to show them how much the traffic was going up at those locations and on their website, it was like not disputable at all. And it was really fun to see it year over year and more than that, month over month and so on. The other ones I'd say are maybe just like the typical ones: impressions, clicks, actions. We put all that tracking in place as well. So
Okay. And then I mean, COVID changed things for everybody to some degree, you know. How did COVID change or impact programmatic? You know, we didn't have as many people going into stores last year. Starting to happen a lot more now, but what changed for you guys?
yeah, great question. So I would say that COVID impacted us pretty heavy for about 45 days. And it was really from the moment that things kind of paused, let's call it kind of March 15th or whatever,
Yeah.
mid-March. For about 45 days, it was budgets were paused. Nobody was moving. Didn't matter what you said. It didn't matter. So that was an interesting time. It was the beginning of where we were really focusing on programmatic. So we simply used that time just to focus on our technology and our approach and our technique for 45 days, which was time well spent. You usually don't take a moment to pause and do that. So I think there was some silver lining in COVID for us. But the other part I think I didn't mention as much about was behavior. So the other thing we can target people with is behavior. And it's really anything like non-Google, as people are doing searches or people are doing, as they're reading things online, contextual-based type stuff. We get all that data as well. And we can target people with ads based on that. So the cool part is, I think a lot of people really struggled with, man, what are trends doing right now? Like, what are consumers doing in this paramount time that no one's ever experienced ever before? Like, people were struggling to get real-time data of what was going on within their respective areas. And the beautiful part was we could monitor what people were reading, what they were searching on, not Google, in a cheaper, more efficient way. And we could use that data to then target very specific people based on what they were reading and what they were searching on. And so that's where we turned our attention. When location kind of went away, we turned our focus to online signals that were very powerful. So
Great. So before we wrap up, I got a couple more questions for you. One is, you'd mentioned the ski resort campaign, which I think is pretty cool. What's the coolest campaign you guys have run since you've been an agency?
Oh, ski resort was a good one. The heavy equipment was a good one. There's another good one too. Is now that things are opening up again, it was closed off for so long. This is a little bit new to me, just because we're fairly new to the programmatic. I'm new to the programmatic agency space, but events are starting to come back online, and it's so fun to talk to companies and say, "Hey, did you know? Like, you may not be opening. Some companies are opening up to events, and some are not."
Yeah.
And there's some really big companies that are cautious about opening up to events because of the liability. It seems like the smaller companies are a little bit more like, "Hey, we're going for it." It seems like the bigger companies are like, we're going to hold it out this year. And what's fun is we can go to those companies and say, "You've got a huge budget you would normally spend on events. You're not able to run an event. Like, you don't have a choice. Your executive team has decided that that's not in the cards this year. What if we went and targeted your competitors, or what if we went and targeted other relevant events, industry type events that are running, so that you can actually put that money to good use and not let it go to waste?" And that has been really fun. It's been fun to show people that you can even do that, but it's really fun to then select which events, which competitor events, do your research to figure out which ones exist. That has been awesome and very effective. Yeah.
I'm sure. And then what do you see as the future, programmatic in the rest of the year? Any big changes that are coming or new trends?
Yeah, I think so. Let me think about this for a moment, because we talk about this all the time as we're trying to predict where to put our dollars and where to invest our technology. I think some of the more interesting ones that are getting a little bit outside the box are, well, one, cookies are going away in a big way. Third-party cookies, I could say. So, programmatic is relatively unscathed. But I think, especially when it comes to manage, like, we really encourage vendors and help vendors with their attribution models, like their multi-touch views. A lot of people come to us and they don't have something in place, or they have something that's not really fully baked. For programmatic, it's so valuable to be able to have that multi-touch or attribution view in place. So we really, really value helping companies with that. And I think as cookies are changing and as tracking is changing, I think that's a really important place to keep your eye on, is how do you still track attribution or multi-touch, but without those third-party cookies? So I think it's very vital, especially as cookies are going away, but it's also an area in transition because of cookies going away. The other one I would say is a close second is it's called DOOH, but it's basically digital out of home marketing. And it's kind of like our conversation with podcasts. I think programmatic very much was a display oriented thing initially, and then it's expanded to connected TV, now podcasts, now streaming radio. The next place that I'd love to see it go is more digital out of home, like billboard, wearables. There's a lot of cool conversations going around how you would use wearables and how you'd use billboards and make them more programmatic, meaning like more hyper targeted. You've got cool companies like Blip in our backyard that are doing really cool things to digitize the billboard space and beyond. I think the next step is like, how do you actually make it a little bit more one-to-one? How do you make it a little bit more targeted, or how do you kind of transfer those programmatic principles to DOOH? I think that's really interesting and worth watching.
Yeah, that is pretty interesting. Yeah, Blip does some cool things, and to even make it so I see one thing and somebody else sees another, that would be amazing.
Very cool. Yeah.
All right, man. Well, Josh, thank you so much for hopping on today and breaking this down. I feel like I actually kind of understand what programmatic is now, which is good. And if people want to get a hold of you and continue the conversation, what's the best way for them to reach out?
Yeah, LinkedIn's a great place. I'm very, very active on LinkedIn, so I usually get my messages instantaneously and respond pretty quick. The other one is our website. It's getabovethefold.com. Definitely a good place to go learn more. We're very active on our blogs and educating. We like the approach of being transparent with programmatic, which is somewhat unique. So we open everything up on our blog and on LinkedIn. So if you want to learn more, those are great places.
All right. Thanks, man. And we'll chat later.
Thanks, Billy. Appreciate it.